In 2024, I got married in the beautiful Riviera Maya located in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. This area is known worldwide for its beautiful beaches, world-class resorts, and natural attractions, and it's also one of the top three wedding destinations outside of the continental US. It's very likely that if you have thought about planning a destination wedding, you have probably thought about having a wedding in the area of Mexico or in Mexico in general. And you have maybe thought that this would be a more cost effective way to have your dream wedding. So now that I myself am approaching my 1 year anniversary, I really wanted to look at the numbers, see what I spent, and really reflect. Was the destination wedding that I had in Mexico actually worth it? So, my husband and I got engaged in August 2023, and we immediately knew that we wanted to have our wedding in Mexico. We really enjoy traveling together, and we had been to different parts of Mexico up to that point already together. So, from the beginning, I think that we were also under the assumption that if we chose to have a wedding in Mexico, it would actually also be significantly cheaper and it would be a more cost effective way to have a wedding versus if we had chosen to have it at home. We are from Southern California and we had actually had some very recent experiences with some recent weddings of family members and them having their weddings here and just telling us how much they spent on their wedding was honestly really shocking. It was frightening numbers that we were hearing. So we really wanted to find something and still have the wedding that we wanted, but be able to save some money along the way. And I also know that a lot of people actually choose to elope for this reason. Monetary constraints are very real, and some couples just choose to go that route to save money versus having a big wedding reception or a big wedding ceremony and spending that money, on a party like that. And that totally is fair. Sometimes it just isn't in the budget. Me personally, I come from a pretty big family and weddings are kind of a really big deal in our culture. So truthfully, I just really couldn't imagine not having a big wedding and a big reception to basically celebrate this huge new chapter. So we really talked about it a little and agreed to look around both at the US and at different options within Mexico. And we were leaning towards Mexico from the beginning. And I think really as a bride to be, when you are first starting your planning journey, you start to get really excited and you start pinning stuff on your Pinterest board. You start coming across different Instagram accounts that are inspiring you for the look that you are going for your wedding. And you will very quickly start to get targeted ads, basically trying to sell you on this dream wedding on a budget sales pitch. And it feeds this idea that you really can have it all on your wedding day. The beautiful arch that you've always dreamt of, the best DJ, amazing food, all of this can be yours if you go with a destination wedding. So I looked at some data, compared what we actually spent on our wedding day versus what that would have cost here, and I ran all the numbers so that you don't have to.
Oh my God.
According to a study by Empower, Americans who plan to get married plan to spend an average of $31,281 on their wedding day. But that is actually 11% than what the average cost of a ceremony and reception in 2023 actually cost. That number actually sat at 35,000. Some recent estimates say that this average has actually climbed to 36,000 in 2025, but all of this does vary based on location. Not surprisingly, I don't think, Gen Z and millennials are willing to spend a little bit more than that average, with millennials actually leading the chart with an average budget of just over 51,000. And as I said, the average price really does fluctuate based on so many different factors, location being a really big one. The jewelry company Mark Broumand published a list of the top 5 most expensive states, with New Jersey actually topping the list at an average spend of 55,000. The cheapest state was actually Utah, coming in at 17,000. They also do have this very interactive US map where you can hover around and see what the cost of a wedding in your state would be. And I will go ahead and link it down below so that you can play around with it and find out what a average wedding costs in your state. By comparison, when you are doing your research for a wedding in Mexico, you will come across a lot of much lower figures with very, very wide ranges. And while I was actually researching for this video, I found it pretty difficult to find an accurate one to one comparison of what the averages are in Mexico versus what they are in the US. And finding a study backed figure to do that one to one comparison was pretty difficult. Some sources were saying, $8,000 is the average. Some were saying 9,500, and some were on a little bit of the higher end with a range of 30,000. So it is a very, very large range. And I do think that the inconsistency serves a purpose, and it does add to the confusion of when you are researching for a destination wedding, is it actually going to be cheaper to have your wedding in Mexico versus just having your wedding here in the US and avoiding the hassle of travel? Honestly, I do think that it is important that the source of these wide ranges is known, because as I was looking into where these, wide ranges were coming from, a lot of these very low figures were being posted by some of the blogs that are within the destination wedding industry. So they actually serve the purpose of enticing you with this low figure, calling in, and then that's when you will find out the real figures of what your actual dream wedding will cost. More than likely, it will not be within the low 8,000 range unless you are picking very, very, very low packages that are not as inclusive as you might think that they might be. The best breakdown for averages that I found was from a company called Joy, which broke down the averages between low budget, mid-range, and luxury. And it did a pretty good job at describing what destination weddings within that range would actually look like. Foolishly, I do think that my husband and I, when we were in the very beginning planning stages of looking at destination weddings and looking at different locations and really thinking that that's what we were going to do, we thought that we could get away with having the luxury wedding for the low budget price. And, we kind of had this idea of like, there's no way that this is going to cost more than $20,000. We can get everything that we want. We can have the perfect dream wedding for that amount. And then pretty quickly, as we kind of started calling around and figuring out different prices and getting different quotes, it became very apparent that the $20,000 range wasn't going to be realistic for what we wanted. The actual budget that we ended up having and what we ended up spending in total was $32,054.80. And this is inclusive of a bunch of things, which I will run through in a moment. But first, I do want to talk a little bit about the venue that we ended up going with, because it was such a beautiful place. It is on a private beach location in Pamul at the beautiful venue called Blue Venado, specifically at the Pamul location. Blue Venado has, I believe, 3 different locations up and down the coast of the Riviera Maya, and I believe all of them are on private beaches, which was honestly probably the biggest reason that we chose to go with them. There are a lot of different options when you are looking at having a wedding in Mexico, especially within the Riviera Maya area. Having a private venue is one, having a resort is more than likely the other option that you might go with. The reason that we didn't want to go with a resort is because a lot of resorts tend to have very strict rules around the timing. Most receptions have to be over by 10 p.m. And this is just because you are staying on a resort with a lot of other hotel guests, and hotel guests want to sleep. They don't want to be hearing a party going on at 11 o'clock at night when they are trying to rest up. So that definitely made sense, but it was kind of a deterring factor. And it was the first deterring factor in why we didn't really want to go with a resort and why we chose to have a private venue instead. For me and my family, we definitely enjoy a good party, and I wanted to extend that party vibe, that celebration feeling for as long as possible. And I really just felt that a 10 p.m. cutoff time was a little bit too short for having them fly out for, 5 hours, 6 hours, and then they're spending their time at this resort, spending their time, their money to go to our wedding. I really wanted them to just have the most fun possible. But the other really important factor is that there is multiple weddings typically happening at a resort. So they will have different wedding locations, and sometimes you will have to pay extra for the actual location that you saw on Instagram, and it comes with an additional cost when you actually want to pick the one that you saw. Another thing being that when you do have all these different locations happening, another couple might have already picked the location that you actually really wanted. So the location that you were dreaming of, that you had pinned on your Pinterest board, it might not actually even be available the dates that you need it to be available because another couple already picked it. On top of those things, when you go with a resort wedding, your wedding is not going to be completely private. A reason why that was kind of an issue for me is because when I was thinking about my wedding and how I wanted my wedding to feel and how I wanted it to really be on that day, I really wanted it to be like me and my husband, soon to be husband at the time, we're in this moment together, and it was just us celebrating with just our closest family and friends, and I wanted it to feel like a very private and intimate event. And I do feel like having your wedding at a resort kind of takes away from that, because a lot of the times the wedding venues that they have and the wedding locations that they have are pretty open to the public, especially if you are having your wedding ceremony on the beach. The beaches are not closed. They're not private beaches. So imagine you are preparing for your wedding ceremony, the music is playing, you know, your husband is right there, your soon to be husband is right there. He's looking at you. The moment is supposed to be magical, and out of the corner of your eye, you see like somebody's grandpa sunbathing, or like people are walking by with margaritas in their hands and they're already acting a little bit belligerent at 12 p.m. It kind of like takes away from the moment that is supposed to be very magical and very intimate and just very much the two of you. So we found Blue Venato on Instagram, and I am so glad that we found them because it is such a special venue. We visited the location about a year before the wedding day, and we did a walkthrough. We met our coordinator. We tried some of the food. We got to take a look at the bridal suite, and honestly, just the very first time that we saw the venue in person, like my jaw dropped, my husband's jaw dropped because it is so pretty. You get there and it is so beautiful. The water is super super clear. They host the actual reception underneath this palapa that they have built. So it feels super super tropical, and of course the ceremony happens right in front of the water. It is honestly the most beautiful location I think I've ever seen. And even to this day, we have guests that tell us that was the most beautiful event that they've ever been to. Not even just weddings, but like an event in general. Having it there, I think it really made guests feel like, wow, this is a special place, and this is a very special event. And it was a very nice moment to be able to share that with our family and friends. Okay, so enough messing around. Let's talk numbers. First, a few disclaimers that I do want to point out before I start going through the actual numbers of what our wedding cost. Blue Venato does offer various packages. We went with the all-in package, which is the most inclusive package. So naturally it is going to be a little bit more expensive, but this did allow us to make as many customizations as we wanted and really make it our own. I'm very glad that we did go with the all-in package because it was, like I said, the most inclusive of all the packages. We also booked this package in August of 2023. So these prices and packages are according to August 2023 numbers. As we all know, the wedding industry, it only goes up every year. So it is more than likely that if you go on the website now or if you reach out to get a quote, these prices are going to be slightly different and the packages might vary slightly. But again, I do want to emphasize the value that you get out of going with this particular venue. We also paid for 64 guests in total, with 9 of those being kids prices and 55 of those being adult prices. So keep all of that in mind as I start going through line by line what this entire package meant, what actually went into the total price of what the wedding cost. And I will also try and include as many pictures of what our actual wedding looked like in accordance to what the line item is. That way you get an idea of what you're actually getting when I'm talking about these things. I will start with the venue itself, which this venue, Blue Venato, charged us $269.99 per adult and $30 per child, which children are up to 11 years old and they will have that $30 price. All of this, like I said, is for the all-in package that Movinato offered. With that price, you get a whole host of things, and I'm gonna go through them right now. You get the bridal suite from 10 a.m. the day of the wedding, a customizable bridal bouquet, the groom boutonniere, two bridesmaids bouquets, 30-minute symbolic ceremony, a microphone for the ceremony, music from a speaker during ceremony, the officiant for your ceremony, the welcome sign, custom decor for your ceremony, choice of three-course dinner. We picked the tropical salad, the ribeye, and the tiramisu. The choice of a midnight meal, we get one centerpiece for every 10 guests. We got lounge furniture for cocktail hour. We got cocktail hour with finger food, champagne and toast service, open bar during the entire reception. So literally from the very beginning of the party to the very end at 2 a.m., the bar was open. We had a custom wedding cake, custom decor for the reception, choice of golden cutlery, chargers, napkins, and runners, choice of rustic, bamboo, crossback, or Tiffany chairs. I believe we went with Tiffany chairs for both the ceremony and the reception. We got a choice of rectangular or round tables. We also got market string and curtain lights. We got the venue rental, like I said, until 2 a.m., which was very, very important for us. Our photographer was also included with our package, and we were able to choose from a selection of different photographers. We chose Photo Moonlight, and they are a husband and wife duo who I absolutely love. They are so, so nice, and they are the ones who took all of the professional photos within this video. They were included in the all-in package, and like I said, I don't know if the all-in package still includes photography within the Blue Venato package, but I do think that if you are planning a wedding within the Riviera Maya area, I think they travel also. So Photo Moonlight, I will go ahead and link them down below so that you can check them out. Another really cool thing that was included in the package was the DJ. So they actually have a DJ that works with Blue Venato directly. They have the sound system, they have all the equipment that the DJ needs, and that is included in the all-in package. But we actually also have a close relationship with a DJ from our hometown. We actually paid to fly him out and have him DJ our wedding because we just couldn't imagine not having him there. We know how he works. So we paid extra to have him go out there. But if that is not something that you are particularly interested in or you particularly care about and you're fine with the DJ being included in the package, I'm sure that he's a great DJ. He comes within the package of the all-in package from Blue Venato. Now, some things that were not included in the all-in package, but we did add on to the package. So they were all coordinated by our wedding coordinator within Blue Venato. We added all of this on. We had paid for the meals for the photography team and the DJ. So those were charged at kids' prices. They got the ribeye and, the tiramisu and the full adult meal, but it was charged at the children's price for vendor fee. We also had an infinity dance floor, and this pricing does depend on the size of the dance floor. Our price, so for 64 people, was $1,440. I also really, really wanted a piñata. So we had a piñata and candy that came out to $76. We had the mariachi, which they played for 45 minutes during cocktail hour, and that cost $550. We also had a photo booth. The service for them was 3 hours long, and it was $580. We also had pickup for 5 people. So we got ready at the bridal suite, and that did cost us $210 for pickup from the resort into Blue Venato. We also paid for 2 extra centerpieces, which were $120 each. Like I mentioned previously, you do get a centerpiece included for every 10 people, but I wanted the seating arrangement to be 8 people per table, which meant that we'd actually need 2 more tables and therefore 2 more centerpieces. So that was $120 each for each extra centerpiece. We also had Crazy Hour with 5 performers, and this was by far my favorite add-on of the entire wedding. I think the Crazy Hour performers that come out are so talented. You get 2 carnival dancers, you get a stilt walker, water drums, and I believe it's like the light up hula hoop performer dancer, and they were so fun. We didn't tell anybody that we were doing this. This was a complete surprise, and we kind of added it on last minute, but It was such a fun way to get the crowd engaged. Definitely my favorite add-on. This cost $800, but it kept the party going, super, super engaging, and just a super fun way to get everybody involved on the dance floor. So, like I mentioned, all of these things were arranged with the coordinator directly at Blue Venato. Also, with this price, when you are looking at different venues within the Riviera Maya area, within Mexico in general, you are going to be charged a service fee on top of whatever your per guest fee is. At Blue Venato, it was 16% for this service fee. I was actually coming across places that were higher than that. I think the highest that I heard was like 20% when I was calling around. So service fees are normal. That will be included at the end of your invoice for whatever your total package was, plus any add-ons. There was also additional costs that we had through other vendors outside of our wedding venue. We did pay for a churro cart with 2 hours of service. This was $460. Obviously, my bridal makeup and hair, that was $430. We also had bus pickup for a total of 64 guests to and from Blue Venato for $715. I just wanted a very easy way for our guests to get to and from the resort. I knew that it was going to be open bar. I knew that people were going to be drinking. I wanted it to be safe. I wanted people to have fun and let loose and not have to worry about how they were going to get back to the hotel. So just arranging the bus was the easiest way to do that. We also hosted a private welcome dinner the night before our wedding at Barcelo Maya Colonial. So this is actually the wedding resort that we stayed at during our time there for the wedding. It was like a 3-hour private dinner within one of the restaurants at Barcelo Maya Colonial, and that included one salad, one entree, and one dessert with open bar for $39 per person. This does not include any decor or sound. So we did add a sound system for $250 so that we can kind of just plug in our phone and play some music while the dinner was going on. And then I did also just buy some, small Amazon decor and brought it just to make the dinner a little bit more personal to what our wedding was. The DJ, we paid to fly him out and have him do his DJ service in Mexico. That was $2,500. I included the price of flights, so that was $972 for two people, myself and my husband. Airport pickup for my husband and I and 14 other family members that actually flew in the same day as us. That was $190. And then obviously our stay, we stayed at the resort, which was an all-inclusive resort for $1,880. And this was for 7 nights in their oceanfront premium room. So I know that they did have cheaper packages available, obviously, if we had stayed less amount of time, or if we had chosen a lower room category, it would have been a cheaper amount. But we wanted the full experience. We're there for our wedding, we wanted to make it special, and so we chose that oceanfront premium room, and it came with like some additional amenities, so that was pretty fun. Grand total being $32,054.80. So that is the grand total of every single line item that I just mentioned. I pretty much just included everything that is very specific to the wedding day and wedding travel that comes with having your wedding as a destination wedding in Mexico, because I wanted it to be very inclusive of what are realistic prices that you can expect to pay, just for the service that you're going to get and the types of amenities and different packages that you can expect to get. Just looking at averages within the US, with wedding costs being around $35,000 on average, we did save $2,945.20. But that number actually does get a little bit more dramatic when I try and do a one-to-one comparison of what we got in Mexico versus what we would have gotten here in the US. For example, most venues in the US are not going to include the open bar. In Mexico, the open bar was included. Like I mentioned, it was included all night until 2 a.m. So that would have been a pretty hefty fee being here in the US. When we are looking at open bar costs alone within the West Coast, that is an average cost of $3,000. And this is according to the popular wedding planning site, The Knot. Speaking of The Knot, I really wanted to try and get a one-to-one comparison of what we got in the Riviera Maya versus what that would have cost here in California. And as you might expect, the first challenge was really trying to find a wedding venue that was a private beach here within the US. I mean, that in and of itself was going to be a bit more expensive. But I was able to find a couple of different venues, and I set up some parameters around that to be able to try and find the closest thing to what we got in Mexico versus what is available here in California. It definitely needed to accommodate my guest count. So it needed to accommodate 64 people at least. It needed to be a private beach venue, and it needed to be within driving distance, with the idea in mind that because we don't particularly live near a beach, we would probably need to spend at least one night wherever this venue was located. So after doing some searching, I did find a wedding venue that was, the closest thing possible to what that comparison would be. And it is a wedding venue called Paradise Point in San Diego. And it really is a beautiful venue. I was looking at it, and like, if I really wanted to get married here and I was still going for that beachy waterfront vibe, I think this would be an excellent location to do so at. It is in the Bay of San Diego, so they have a couple of different waterfront locations. So definitely a very beautiful option if you're not looking to do a destination wedding and you are within the California area. I did take a look at their general prices, and I'm going to just go based on their low end quotes. $1,500 for the rental fee is what they have posted, $4,000 for the ceremony fee, and $195 per person for their base package. And the service charge, that is not just unique to Mexico. The service charge is going to be here in the US as well. They have a service charge of 27% for 50 or more guests. So this is a total of $22,834.60. However, this only includes a fraction of what we got included in our package at Blue Venado. So just going through this list, it only includes a suite for the couple on the wedding night, linens, napkins, and chairs. No specification on what kinds of linens, napkins, and chairs. It might be like an upgrade fee for the particular, style that you're looking for. It does include the wedding cake, a selection for a toast drink, and then 1 hour of hosted bar during cocktail hour for your guests with hors d'oeuvres.
That's just fancy talk.
Plated dinner, and a tasting for up to 4 guests prior to the wedding. Honestly, that is a pretty good package, but again, I want to emphasize the fact that you're not getting everything that you would get with a wedding in Mexico. For example, going back to that open bar scenario, the cheapest drink tier that they offer would actually be $82 per person for just 4 hours. So this alone adds $4,510 to the venue total. And we still have to add up everything else, right? Like, I just used averages of everything based on their low end package. Like I mentioned, it could cost more to upgrade the types of chairs you want, or if you want more than 4 hours of open bar, or if you want maybe like a nicer dinner, like maybe their dinner options are different prices based on what you actually select. And then as far as everything else goes, because you still have to think about your decoration costs, your DJ costs. If you want to have your officiant is not included in this price, so you're going to have to pay for all of those additional things. And in order to kind of get a base price of what those things cost, I did use the averages of everything else based on that budget advisor tool from the Knot. And I based it specifically on the San Diego area, since that is where this venue is located. And then I plugged in that rough estimate from Paradise Point into the calculation in order to kind of get that rough estimate with the venue cost and then the average cost of everything else. So that average cost came out to $41,321 total, bringing the grand total in savings that we had for that same wedding in Mexico to $9,266.20. And again, this is with me selecting the low end averages. So it is very likely that this range is probably on the, lower end of the spectrum, and it is probably going to be more in savings once you actually start calling around and asking for different quotes. I can definitely imagine that the savings that you would see would be probably a lot more than that $9,266.20. thing to also discuss is the added layer of complexity that comes when you're planning a destination wedding. The first, I think, added layer that you get is the distance. Whether you are planning a wedding in a different country or in a different state, you kind of have this fish out of water moment where you realize that you're planning a wedding with vendors that you will likely never meet in person until the day of your wedding. And that can be kind of scary, especially if you are kind of a type A bride, or you are the type of bride that likes to be very involved in the planning process. That is going to be something that you have to be comfortable with our vendors and really just our wedding coordinator, because that was really the only person that we communicated with aside from our photographer and our officiant. We basically reached out by Instagram, connected on WhatsApp, and then everything from there was, yeah, like a WhatsApp confirmation, or like if I had any questions, everything was through WhatsApp. Any emails that were, official in terms of getting the invoices through and things like that. Everything was very much online. And then as we kind of got closer to the wedding date, I believe like 6 months out, that's when it became really about the planning process of what we wanted our wedding to look like. And then we would hop on different Zooms and kind of discuss various different things about what the wedding would actually be. Like one, Zoom wedding would be about what do you want your decor to look like? Another Zoom wedding meeting would be about like what do you want your officiant to focus on during your ceremony? So, yeah, I mean, it was very sporadic, and it was definitely a learning curve also, because sometimes like I would reach out with questions and I would not get an answer to my question for like days. And I do want to emphasize the days part, because I do think that as Americans, we are very much like go, go, go people. When we send out an email, when we send out a text message, we kind of expect a response almost instantly, at least like within the same couple of hours. And that is just not the vibe that is over there. It is a very lax vibe. They will kind of, they'll see your message, they'll respond when they get to it. And they were never rude or anything. Like, I don't want to make it seem like, oh my God, they were never responding to me, because that's not the case. It's just a different, I think, culture. They understand that it is your big day and you are understandably going to have a lot of questions, but it's not something that they will respond to immediately if it is not an immediate necessity. If your wedding is a year out and you have a question about what are the chair arrangements going to be, I mean, that is not an immediate question that needs to be answered. Like they have time to respond to that. And I think that that is very much something that if you are not used to, it can be a little bit frustrating at first, but you'll get used to it in the process. And it is not something that hindered, I think, my wedding day in the slightest at the end of the day. So honestly, totally fine. Also, another thing to note is that because you are planning from a far distance, more than likely you are not going to see the venue or meet your vendors prior to the actual wedding day. So you might just have to go based off of pictures. You might just have to go based off of Zoom calls, and you have to be okay with that. Like you have to be okay with not seeing things in person. Like I mentioned, I think previously, we did actually take a 3-day weekend to go out there and see the venue and meet the coordinator, I think like a year before the actual wedding took place. And this was just something that I really wanted to do. I had like 3 days off and I just wanted to go down there and check it out. I don't think that it's absolutely necessary to do that though. I do think that when you are looking at things on Instagram and you're communicating with your coordinator, just ask your questions, make sure that you are getting the answers that you are looking for, and just be communicative. I don't think that it's absolutely necessary to go down there and take extra time, stretch your budget if it's not within your budget, to go down there and see the venue prior to your actual wedding day. At least not with the venue that we went with. I completely trust them, and it is truly a beautiful venue. It looks even better in person than it does on Instagram, and I bet you 99% of the wedding venues that are down there, that is going to be the case, because it is just a beautiful part of the world. Like the area that is Riviera Maya is so gorgeous. There is a reason that it is one of the top 3 wedding destinations outside of the continental US. And yeah, I don't think that it's absolutely necessary to have to add it in your budget to go down there and see it prior to your wedding day. Finally, be prepared for people to RSVP no to your wedding. I think this is understandable. You are asking people to travel long distance in order to make it to your wedding day. And for whatever reason, whether they can't take time off of work or whether there's health concerns, whether it's just not in their budget to be able to do so, it is going to happen. So definitely be prepared to have about 60 to 70% of your guest list RSVP yes. And then also expect another 5 to 10% of guests to drop off after that. So even if they have RSVP'd yes, always be prepared for those like last minute cancellations because something might happen and they just might not be able to get on a plane and travel, 5, 6 hours in order to make it to your wedding day. And that's okay. You have to be understanding of that. This definitely actually was the case for us. Unfortunately, we did have some family members that couldn't make it last minute, and we just had to be okay with that. It was a little bit sad because they weren't there, but we completely understand, and that is all you can do. More than anything, I think it is about trying to include as many of the people that you want to be there. And if they can make it, great. And if they can't, send your love, send them pictures after. And I think everybody will be happy. I can honestly, comfortably answer the question, was my destination wedding worth it? And the answer is duh. We honestly had so much fun having our wedding over there, and even just like planning the wedding and thinking about what that week was going to bring was so fun. And then being there with all of our family and friends, just seeing them walking around the resort like days leading up to the wedding and the days after the wedding, it was so special. I honestly cannot think of another time when that has happened. All these different people from different corners of your life are coming together to celebrate your wedding, and they're doing it during this week-long vacation. I mean, it was truly, truly special. There's no feeling like it. It is so fun, so much fun. I also think like when you are planning a destination wedding, that is truly what you are buying. You are buying time. You are buying an extended wedding week. It's not just a wedding day. It really is a wedding week, or, if you're doing 4 days or however many days the people that you love are staying there with you to celebrate your wedding day, it is an extended celebration of what is your wedding and this new chapter in your life. And aside from the number, which I think the number speaks for itself, we did save money by having our wedding out there. We also saved in the value of time because by having our wedding down there, we extended the amount of moments that we got to share with all these different people and just seeing them interact with each other. I mean, it was truly an unforgettable experience. And I think from the beginning, that is kind of what we envisioned this week to be, and it really was that. And I am honestly just so grateful that that is the experience that we had. I mean, I wish I could go back to a year ago and still be in that planning process, even though there were like stressful moments, even though there were things that maybe didn't go perfect or didn't go as planned. I wish I could relive all of it because it was such a special time in my life, and I cannot, express enough how grateful I am to have experienced that. I do think that if you are thinking about having a destination wedding and you're trying to decide if a wedding in the US versus a wedding in Mexico is right for you, I hope that this video is at least helpful in breaking down what the actual numbers are, what the actual data is, and it helps you really decide, is a wedding in Mexico actually worth it for you? Lastly, I do just want to say this is my very first YouTube video ever in my entire life, so I do apologize if it is not completely professional, if something is slightly off. I am really, really sorry about that, but this is my first video, and I do plan to make more videos similar to this. I am super, super interested in how data looks in the real world and what that actually means when you're thinking about making your next life decision or you're thinking about planning something. We always come across data and numbers and they might seem so, so scary, but what does that actually look like? I definitely am interested in that. And if you're interested in that too, go ahead and subscribe. If you have any other questions about my destination wedding planning journey, ask them in the comments below. I am more than happy to answer them. And thank you so much. See you next time.